So tapping is basically the same thing as a hammer-on or pull-off, except now we're going to engage our right hand and we're not going to pick at all. Hey, what's going on everyone? This is Nick. Today I'm going to be talking about tapping, hammer-on, pull-offs, and general legato playing. So this is the start of a new series where I go on YouTube and search how-to guitar and create video lessons based on the results. If there's anything that you'd like to hear about, please let me know in the comments. So let's get into it. So the textbook definition of legato is in a smooth flowing manner without breaks in between the notes. So what exactly does that mean? Well, simply put, it means that all our notes are connected and there's no space between any of the notes. In other words, this would be an example of legato playing if I played this A note and I played B before that A note finished. Now to contrast that, staccato is when we play very short notes that aren't held out very long at all and the notes are not connected, so it'll sound like this. So both of them have their uses, both of them have their merits, but in my opinion, legato playing is the playing that I like to do the most. Now, for any guitarist, being able to play a combination of legato and staccato is going to get you the most musical results. Here's an example of that. So as you can see, I had a really big contrast between my long and flowy notes and my really short notes. If these sort of things interest you, please consider liking and subscribing. I'm making new videos every Monday and Thursday. Now you may be wondering, how do we develop the legato skill? Now the biggest foundation for legato playing is to make sure not to lift up your fingers until you play the next note. So as an exercise, take for example a G major scale or any major scale really. So basically what we want to do is play through the scale extremely slowly. And make sure not to lift up your finger until the next note is played. Now if we want to be really extreme about it, lift up your finger after you play the next note. Here's another example with the C major scale. Now for that, every time I play the next note in the scale on an adjacent string, I didn't lift up my finger. So that attributes to the smooth flowing sound. So one thing that's important for all of this is to always use a metronome. With legato playing, sometimes it's kind of challenging to actually get them pretty rhythmically accurate, but once you do, you'll have a good legato sound. So for all these exercises, make sure you're using a metronome when you're practicing this. Now, another primary technique that you'll want to use is hammer-ons and pull-offs. So basically a hammer-on is whenever you play two notes, but you only strike the guitar once with your right hand. In other words, if we play from G to A, my right hand's going to be suspended, while the left hand is doing the work. Now in order to get a really nice and clean hammer-on sound, you're going to want to strike kind of quietly with your right hand, but kind of aggressively with your left hand to get a really balanced sound. It should maintain the same evenness as even when I play with a pick. And the last thing I played is a pull-off. So with a pull-off, basically, you're going to play your first note, and then you're going to pull this finger off of the fretboard to a note on the previous fret. Now, in the classical style of guitar playing, one thing that's really emphasized for pull-offs is that we're not going to just lift, because then we're going to get a weak sound. In order to get a really full sound and get a really even sound, you're going to kind of want to snap your finger down. It's almost as if you're using this finger as your right hand. So that's the main goal, is to be able to play all the notes super evenly and make it almost sound as if you're picking them, but you're not. You're making it legato and you're making it smooth, and in my opinion, you're making a really pleasant sound. So one exercise that I really like to do from this, I got from the book called Pumping Nylon. Now this is one of the first few exercises in the book. Essentially what we're going to do is practice using every combination of fingers on our left hand. And we're going to do all the pull-offs, hammer-ons, and then trills. So I'll get to trills in a second, but I'm going to show you an example of this. So we're going to start off, we can do any fret. If you're just starting off somewhere between 7th fret and 9th fret might be good, or like the 5th and the 8th fret. Basically, the higher you go up on the fretboard, the smaller frets are going to be, the more easy it's going to be. So we're going to start off with our index finger and our middle finger. Now we want to use our 1 finger per fret method. So if you want to choose the 7th fret, you're going to start with your index finger in the 7th fret, middle finger in the 8th fret, ring finger on the 9th fret, and then pinky in the 10th fret. So to start off this exercise, we're going to be only using the 7th and 8th fret and our index and middle finger. And we're going to do hammer-ons on all the strings going up and then going back down. But when we go down, we're going to still hammer on, we're not going to pull off. So it's going to sound like this. Now for these exercises, you're going to want to be very, very slow and deliberate about it. It's almost as if you're going to the gym. When you go to the gym, if you do a bunch of reps, but you do them really fast, it's not going to be as much of a workout as if you go really slowly and really work out your muscles. Same thing applies here. It might be kind of tough at the beginning to go slowly, but I want you to try to go as slow as possible. Even turn on a metronome to around 40 BPM and try that. So then after that, we're going to do every combination of hammer-on, starting with our index finger. So we're going to do index middle, then index ring, then index pinky. So I'm going to do it fast to demonstrate, but again, make sure you're playing this slowly. Make sure you're getting the nice and even sound. We're going to do our index finger and pinky. It's kind of like a faux pentatonic scale, not quite there. So then when we're done with that, we're going to move on to our middle finger, and we're going to use our middle finger ring finger. And then we're going to do our middle finger pinky, which is going to get a little harder. The funny thing is that when you're doing those, the harder ones, it's actually better to go faster than slower because it's actually a little easier to play it a little faster. And so for that, I would recommend starting fast and start slowing down. You could, for example, turn on a metronome and then go down 3 clicks every time you feel comfortable with the new tempo. So for example, you would start at like 70 and then go down to 67, then 64, then 61, then 58, etc. Then we have the pull-off starting with our ring finger, and the only one with that is our ring pinky. This one is probably the hardest one. So remember, for all of them, you want to have a really, really even sound, which makes the pinky one so difficult because oftentimes we're not really used to using our pinky in that way, and our pinky's not as strong as our other fingers. So that's all the combination of hammer-ons. Now I want to show you the pull-offs. So it's going to be the same exact thing. We're going to do middle, index. Again, I'm going fast for demonstration purposes, but when you're practicing this, make sure to go slow. Then we're going to do our ring index. And then our pinky index. And then our ring in middle. Ring pinky. Sorry, pinky middle. And then our pinky ring. So those are all the combination of pull-offs. So the next thing we have is a trill, and essentially what we're going to do is hammer on and then pull off. So we're going to do the same exact thing, except we're going to do both of them. And then you also want to do pull off, hammer on, pull off, so the opposite. Remember to go slowly for all of these. And those are those exercises. The Pumping Nylon book recommends you doing these every day as soon as you pick up the guitar as a warm-up. And honestly, it feels really good as a warm-up, and your left hand will come out feeling strong. At first, you actually might feel burn, which is kind of funny that the book is called Pumping Nylon, but it's a really great way to develop your legato playing. Then my next recommendation would be to work on arpeggios. So the Pumping Nylon example is great because you get all the fingers. However, it's not really that much of a musical example, although you should always strive to make it sound musical when you're practicing. So the next thing we're going to want to do to practice legato playing is work on our arpeggios. And basically we're going to arpeggiate the 4 main triads. We're going to do major, minor, diminished, and augmented. If you're unsure on how to spell these chords, check out my video on how to get the chords in any scale. and I go through how to spell each of these triads and how to figure out the notes in them. So these are the arpeggios I like to use when I'm working on legato. The first one's going to be major. The second one's going to be minor. The next one is going to be diminished. And the last one's going to be augmented. Those are great because they're full of hammer-ons and pull-offs. Another great way we can practice hammer-ons and pull-offs is by playing 3 notes per string scales. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up G major, and I'm going to make sure to only play 3 notes per string. And I'm going to make sure that I'm only using hammer-ons and pulling off as many times as I can. So for example, if I start on G major, which is on the 3rd fret of the E string. Again, we're going to make sure we're going to be even, and then when I hit here, I'm going to go up to the next note on the scale, which is on the 10th fret, that's a high D. I'm going to come down pulling off. Then we can continue with that. And so on. Now finally that we have a good grasp on hammering on and pulling off, we're going to introduce tapping. So tapping is basically the same thing as a hammer on and pull off, except now we're going to engage our right hand and we're not going to pick at all. So for example, you may have heard Eddie Van Halen in Hot for Teacher or Eruption. Another early example of tapping we could find is Steve Hackett on Dancing with the Moonlit Night off of Genesis' album Selling England by the Pound. Now essentially when we're tapping, we're going to be using one of the fingers on our right hand. We're going to use it as our kind of engine for our notes rather than using a pick. So essentially one of these fingers is going to be our initial hammer on, then we're going to pull off from that, and then we're going to hammer on again and pull off. So when I'm playing this, I actually like to use my middle finger so that way I can keep holding my pick. So for example, let's take our middle finger and we're going to tap on the 12th fret. Now after we do that, we're going to have our index finger in the 3rd fret and we're going to pull off from the tap onto the 3rd fret. Now when you're doing this, it's the same kind of concept as the pull off, so make sure you're kind of swiping like that. Remember, this is going to be our engine. And then we're going to hammer on to the 7th fret. So we can do this as triplets, for example. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. We can do it in the 16th notes as well. And when we do that, we're going to have to do 4 notes. So what we can do is tap the 12th fret, pull off to the 3rd fret, tap the 7th fret, and pull off with our left hand back to the 3rd fret. The next thing you're going to want to do is change strings. So let's go to the E string. And so finally, one last exercise I would recommend doing is trilling in your left hand and then tapping on your right hand. So for example, we're going to, let's say, pick the 7th and 8th fret of the high E string. We're going to trill that. Now we're going to tap a G major scale on the low E string. Another thing that I like to do is use this part of my finger to tap 2 notes at once. So that was my lesson on legato playing, tapping, hammering on, pulling off, etc. If you've enjoyed this lesson, please consider liking and subscribing. I'm making new videos every Monday and every Thursday. So tune in if you like guitar lessons, covers, gear reviews, gear demos, etc. So thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far through, please give it a like, and I hope to see you next time.